So, Ari, can you kind of introduce yourself to our audience firstly?
Yeah, of course. Hi, my name is Ari Trzak. I am the co-founder and chief creative officer at Cicalofia. We help women-led tech and tech-enabled companies craft a brand that delights their customer beyond pretty design, deliver no-brain user experience, and getting them the clarity they need for their business to thrive online.
Right.
Additionally, I also founded Creative Women's Co. here in Chicago, serving as a design consultant, mentor, and professional peer in support of fellow female entrepreneurs throughout Chicago.
Right. Interesting. So, what we're going to be talking about today are top things we often forget about UI UX in a B2B context. So, what is the difference between UI UX for B2B and B2C?
I feel like at the core, UI UX for both B2B and B2C have a lot in common, right? I think at the very core, it basically providing a solution or to a better a user's life. Now, aside from making sure that the user can find what they need from a website or any other digital platforms, they also need to feel that they are in control or somehow feel guided throughout the experience. And they also need to feel delight throughout the journey. However, though, what I see is that the most prominent difference between the UI UX for B2B and B2C is that on their buying decision. If you look at the UI UX for B2B, it's primarily focused on planned purchases, whereas the B2C is more on the emotions purchases. Sometimes even rather impulsive, right? Now, if you even think about yourself, like when you go to a certain website, buy maybe, I don't know, it could be like a vitamin for yourself, or maybe it could be just clothing and things. It all based on your emotion, right? How you feel and how you want to eventually feel after either consuming a certain product or even after buying a certain product. Maybe it's something that you wear, something that you use or eat or drink. So I think based on that, a lot of the time the B2B focus more on their UI UX to support the emotion purchases, whereas the B2B is more on the planned purchases for a long-term either service or a long-term system or applications.
And why do you think UI UX for B2B is kind of lacking? Like it's not really there as much as we would say that the UI UX for B2C is. So, what role do you think UX UI designers can play in it?
I feel like right now, I actually feel we are heading into a really good direction, right? Imagine like comparing ourselves right now from 10 years ago and where we are right now. I feel like in terms of like UI UX on its own, it's getting really, really good. You start seeing that there are improvement on some of the B2B that used to look so terrible or poorly executed. Now, a lot of them have now refreshed their UI and also has a lot more thought through process throughout the user journey and the experience on that particular platforms. I feel that a lot of these have an influence in the past where, how oftentimes in the past, all of the older apps or all of the other older software, a lot of them were pretty much built in the 90s and early 20s, where it literally was just built by a team of engineers. And we didn't even know what UI UX was back then. But now we do, and we start seeing all the shift from the poorly designed B2B apps that I mentioned earlier into not just beautiful, but it has more thought through process and experience for the user so that they can feel like, yes, this is really easy to use, yes, this is really solve my problem, and it better their lives in general.
Yeah. And like you mentioned, like we have indeed made a lot of progress when it comes to B2B UI UX. So I think it's fair
Mm-hmm.
to say that we can, see what works, what hasn't worked. So what are the best UX UI practices to follow for B2B commerce specifically?
B2B commerce specifically, a couple of things that I start seeing is definitely understand what is the purchase decision, right? Why are they planning for certain purchases? I would often suggest a lot of our clients who are in the B2B space to really look at users and their personas, like what is their challenges. Now, if we start understanding the purchase decision and why is it planned for, oftentimes actually rather the long term one. So a few things that I would often share with a lot of our clients or leads is that, really look at the content for your B2B sites. Like we know that the user for B2B primarily are going to look at the products or the service and really think through it in a rather long terms, because they want to make sure that this particular solution is going not only to fit them, their team, but also the business. So number one, content for the B2B sites needs to support this particular user's long purchase decision, meaning that you can support them by providing content like, blog posts that are relevant, or ebooks, or even webinar and videos that really showcase or give them a case study that support the solution for their current challenges for them, their team, and the business. And number two, make sure you actually make it easy for them to understand and as clear as possible, meaning at any possible integration with their current systems, or mention the capability, or even like if there are any regulatory information that needs to be included, make it so clear so that the user feel they are really confident on what they're going to purchase, and they feel good that this is the right solutions for them and for the company. The last thing that I would say though is definitely craft supporting content that speak to both the choosers and the users. So why do I say choosers and users? Because if you really look at the B2B persona, right? There are the managers, there are the directors, or there are also the team members. So both of these people are going to be using the product or service, and you have to make sure that your content speak both to these two personas. Now, I feel like by creating the two personas and making sure that your content speaks to both, you help answer the concerns that both parties, the choosers and the users, that they have before they actually make their final purchase decision.
You've made some interesting points over there, but how difficult is it to understand these very personas? And is this the first place that a designer would start at?
Yes, definitely always start with the users. People always ask like, okay, where do I start, right? Like now that we're start thinking about the UI UX, how can we improve? Where is the first place that we need to really revisit and really look at? So I often suggest you always have to start with the users, because your business is for the user. Your apps or software or anything that you are offering on the digital side is for the users, right? So really look at like many successful B2B companies out there that is really doing well. They really understand what their customers' needs are. And I think we should really look at that example as well, because if you really prioritize the customer experience and then support it with a really thought through journey for them, you really capture their attention, right? And they feel that you really understand who they are, their needs, and providing the right type of solution just for them. So really start with defining like who your users really are at first. What do they do day to day? Is there things that really frustrate them? What solutions are they really craving for? And then where do they really hang out? And how do they really hear about your B2B company? I feel like those are the type of questions that you can always start with. And I feel like once you start brainstorming all of these questions and information, you start seeing it clearly, because you'll know like, okay, person A or like person B, they know about us because X, Y, and Z happened, or maybe something frustrates them within the team and they're now looking for solutions so that maybe the team can, collaborate rather easily now that we are in remote work type of environment. So I think there's a lot to do with the users and what their challenges and what they really are looking for out of a company's solutions, products, or services. So I think, yes, always start with the users.
Right. And then that brings me to my next question. I feel that this is something that's also a challenge, right? For any company or any designer, especially ones that are new in the field. So over the course of your experience, what are some tips that you'd give to like somebody just starting out, or even companies that are struggling to kind of, really nail their user experience?
Yeah, I'll answer the first one first. For new designers who are trying to break into the design industry, I feel that, I also mentor a lot of different mentees in the past and many aspiring designers. And one thing that I found is that their biggest challenge is really on how they can set themselves apart in the vast marketplace that we are in right now. I feel like the UI UX industry is getting super crowded every single day, especially now that you start seeing, UI UX boot camps everywhere, and it's all available for anyone who would like to switch their careers into the industry. And
Yeah.
with that, the industry is getting really saturated. It's really challenging for new designers to break into the industry and then mark their, I'm just gonna say like territory or whatever, right? For the solutions though, there are a few ways to break into the industry. Some might tell you to get as much experience as possible in the UI UX, regardless what the industry are. Maybe it's fashion, maybe it's medical field, or maybe it's tech. But others might tell you to polish your portfolio to appeal to future employers or clients. Now, for my end, I often suggest to my mentees and new designers is that pick a niche industry that you really love and passionate about and leverage your strength. For example, I had mentored a UI UX designer who used to work at a bank, and his basically his background is all about the financial stuff. Like he's really knowledgeable about the financial industry. So I noticed that. And what I suggested him is that leverage your strength and explore the fintech industry, because I know he's also interested in technology, but he's still trying to figure out his way in. So I just recommended that, and now he really get the fintech, and he's really breaking into the industry as one of the UI UX designer who really knows the ins and outs about the financial industry and the fintech industry. I feel like that alone has set him apart from the other designers, and that also give him leverage to break into the industry.
Yep. So you mentioned that you've mentored a lot of new designers over the past few years. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So how do you think that experience has been? Like, would you like to give an example of something that was really challenging for you, or anything? Would you like to share something?
Around mentoring?
Yeah. Like from a design perspective.
From a design perspective, I feel that it helps me understand what's going on in the industry, right? I've seen many different mentees who are either coming out of design school or an art school or incubators or even boot camps. So I feel like there's so many different ways now that UI UX designers can really get their education around the industry, and also trying to figure out okay, what is some of the best way to be a good designers when it comes to the UX path or on the UI path, or maybe both. So I start seeing quite different pathways that you can take as a designer. You can be just a UI designer, you can be just a UX designer, or you can have both, right? And even if you do have both, though, there is going to be the one thing that you lean over to the other. So whether you are maybe a UI UX designer that focus more on the UX research, or you can be a UI UX designer who are leaning more towards the UI design. I think whichever one you choose, it's definitely have to leverage your strength, because imagine if you can leverage your strength and your passion. I think when you find the right opportunities, you're really going to enjoy that. And I think
absolutely
that really it really go back, right? Because you want to create the career that you love. And I think if you are coming from a different background before and making a switch into the UI UX, I'm pretty sure you really do want to, get it right, in a sense that you're trying to create opportunities for yourself, but also find enjoyable work that you can also make impact on. So definitely don't be afraid to kind of set yourself apart, whether it's leveraging niche or leveraging your own strength, and knowing exactly where your best skills really rely on.
Okay. Yeah, makes sense. So that, I guess, wraps up our first topic. So thank you so much for joining us on Better Tech.
Yeah.